Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k Necrons. Now in today's video we're going to be doing our first list build on the channel for 10th edition, and we're jumping straight in there doing a 2000 point list. So we're going to be talking about the tactics throughout the video, and we're also going to be explaining the reasons for taking certain units, and at the end of the video we're going to be talking about how I would prefer to deploy this army and how I would prefer to move these units around the battlefield in an ideal game, of course. Now, of course, some games don't go as ideal, but this is just a plan after all. So let's kick this thing off, and we're going to start with our Warlord, and it's going to be Canoptek the Stormlord. Now, he's going to be costing us 105 points, and the reason for taking Canoptek the Stormlord is for his two abilities. The first one, Grand Strategist, to gain 1 command point in your command phase. Potentially that's 5 CP throughout the game, if he does survive the entire game. It's quite a lot of farming of CP there. And secondly, Lord of the Storm. It's only once per battle, but you're effectively throwing out mortal wounds to a unit within 12 or each enemy unit within 12 inches. So I quite like both of those abilities, but especially gaining a CP every single battle round. Now he is going to be leading a unit, and it's going to be a unit of 10 Necron Immortals. Now I'm going to be equipping them with the Tesla Carbines for this video. There's obviously the option of having the Gauss Blasters. I personally prefer the Tesla Carbines on the Immortals. I'd rather keep the lethal hits on the Necron Warriors when I do take Warriors. I think they're just better at it. They've got the Gauss Flayers and they can take a lot more of them, 20 of them, and a lot more shots there. So with the Immortals, I just prefer to take the Tesla. So for 10 of these guys, it's going to be 140 points, and that's going to attach to Canoptek the Stormlord. Now, the reason for taking the Immortals, let's in fact go through that, because there's a few reasons. First of all, they've got a better weapon. The Tesla Carbine has an assault keyword, so we can advance with these guys, and then we can still fire as normal. It's got the Sustain Hits 2 ability, so every critical hit will score 2 additional hits. We love that. And it's Strength 5, whereas that's pretty good. Now, they've got their unique ability, which is Implacable Eradication, and effectively they get to reroll win rolls over 1. And if they're within range of an objective marker, they get to reroll all the win rolls instead. So pretty good. Especially when the amount of hits that we're going to get from the Sustain Hits 2 ability. So yeah, they're going with Canoptek the Stormlord. Now we will be adding another character to this unit, and it's going to be a Plasmancer for 55 points. Now in case some of you guys are wondering or slightly confused to why I'm bringing 2 characters in a unit, well, this is why. On the Plasmancer's datasheet, just like with all the other Cryptex, this model can be attached to the following units: Immortal, Ditch Guard, and Necron Warriors. You can attach this model to one of the above units, even if a Royal Warden or a Noble has already been added to this unit. If you do so, that bodyguard unit is destroyed. The leaders attached to the unit become separate units to their original starting strengths. So we can effectively have a Cryptek with a Royal Warden or a Cryptek with a Noble, and Canoptek the Stormlord is a Noble. So therefore we get to have 2 leaders, 1 Plasmancer and 1 Canoptek the Stormlord. Now the reason for the Plasmancer, this is where everything comes together. So there's 2 abilities in fact again. The first one is the main one in my opinion, Harbinger of Destruction. So every critical hit within the unit becomes a 5+ rather than a 6+. So if you remember with the Tesla Carbine, Sustain Hits 2, any rolls of a 6 will inflict 2 more hits. Well, that will now happen on a 5+, not a 6+. So 1/3 of your dice is going to create 2 additional hits every single time. Yeah, that's a lot of hits. And then when we're re-rolling win rolls of a 1 or re-rolling all the win rolls because they're Immortals, even better, right? Even better. He's then got Living Lightning, so in the shooting phase you can select a unit within 18 inches. And for every model in the unit, each roll of a 6 inflicts a mortal wound. So that's going to stack quite nicely with Canoptek the Stormlord's ability, which was Lord of the Storm. So a nice bit of synergy, a little bit of combination in terms of mortal wounds there. So as far as that unit is concerned, that is Unit 1. That is a combined total of 300 points for that unit out of the 2,000 points. Let's get into the second of this, well, of the units, I suppose. So the second unit is 20 Necron Warriors with the Gauss Flayers for 240 points. So those Gauss Flayers have the Lethal Hits ability. So that means any unmodified hit roll of a 6, you don't need to roll to wound, you've already wounded. Pretty nice, especially when you've got 20 of them. They've got 1 shot each, but it does have rapid fire 1. So if it's within 12 inches, you're going to get 2 shots each. So that would be 40 shots in total if you can get within 12 inches. But yeah, there's going to be plenty of 6s there. so you don't even need to roll to wound. Even if the model that you're targeting is toughness 20, it doesn't matter. If you roll a 6, you just bypass that part. You don't need to worry about the toughness. That's why I really like the Ghost Flayers when you've got lethal hits. Now we're going to be adding, in fact before we start adding things, let's talk about their ability. Doesn't really relate to the damage outlay, but their number is Legion, so if they're using reanimation protocols, they're using D6 wounds instead of D3, and if they're on an objective, it's going to be D3 plus 3. So they're very easy to return, and there's a lot of synergy which we'll come across later in this video. So we're going to be stacking a Necron Lord, which is 65 points to this unit, and the Necron Lord, well, he's got 3 things to talk about. So there's 3 bits of synergy for the Necron Warriors. The first one is Relentless March, so you're adding 1 to the movement characteristics of the entire unit. Pretty nice. The second one is the Lord's Will, which I really like. I don't know if you guys have come across this yet, but once you are battle shocked and you can't be using the protocol of Vengeful Stars, for example, or Undying Legions, it's a pain in the butt. So you want to be using these stratagems. So this effectively allows you to still use stratagems rather, even if the unit is battle shocked. And I quite like that. And the third ability, again the most important ability, the Resurrection Orb. You can use reanimation protocols in your opponent's command phase. So not just your command phase, your opponent's too. Nice, nice. Now I'm going to be adding a second unit, just like the first time round, and it's going to be another Plasmancer. You're going to see a bit of a theme within this list. So the Plasmancer, 55 points. We don't need to go through his abilities again. However, we do need to take note that he's still got that ability with the 5+ to make critical hits, and that's going to stack nicely with lethal hits. The Ghost Flayers have lethal hits, so a 6 will, you don't need to roll to wound for them. That will now activate on a 5+. So again, when you've got that many shots on a 5+, you don't need to wound. Toughness 20, who cares, right? You just go straight through to the armor save with a lot of shots. 1/3 of the dice, in fact. So yeah, that's a nice little bit of synergy. And as for, well, that unit in fact is going to cost us 360 points, so slightly more expensive, but that's because of the Necron Warriors. We've got 20 of them, 240 points just for the 20-man blob there, with the Necron Lord and the Plasmancer. Now we've got a third unit in terms of battle line units, and it's another 20-man blob, 20-man brick of Necron Warriors, and again I've gone with the Ghost Flayers. I think I prefer them this edition. We'll see how they fare against the Reapers. I just don't think the Reapers are quite cutting it for me because of they've got lethal hits, but now they've not got the range. So I prefer the Flayers at the moment. So 240 points. Again, I'm not going to go through all their stats and stuff. But this time I'm going to be not taking a Necron Lord. I'm going to be taking a Necron Overlord, which is probably our best, one of our best, probably if not our best character within this index. So he's 85 points. I'll probably take him with the Void Scythe in case he gets epically, I always say that, if he gets epic challenged with the core rule stratagems. We don't want something, or a character to come and just take him out in melee. So give him something to fight back with is the way I do it. Void Scythe. Now the Overlord has got, again, 3 abilities that are going to relate to the unit, which is the Warriors. So the first one is probably the most important here this time, My Will Be Done. So once per battle round, you can select this unit as a target for a stratagem, and it's going to be completely free of charge, and you can also have used it already that turn, or that phase in fact. So that could be the Protocol of Vengeful Stars. If you lose a model in your opponent's shooting phase, you can fire. It could be the Protocol of Undying Legions. If you lose a model in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase, guess what? You can use reanimation protocols. There's loads of stratagems, maybe Overwatch from the core rules. If you want to use those kind of stratagems for free, bang, there you go. Now remember, in fact, even though this is free, you'll probably still be using other stratagems with other units, because you can use the same stratagem twice in a phase if you are using this ability. And Imhotep the Stormlord that we spoke about earlier in this video is going to be farming that CP, so we're going to be good with CP. I think we're going to be pretty good. Now the second ability, Implacable Resilience, it's a -1 to damage. Again, that's only really going to apply if it gets epic challenged. Otherwise, or I suppose snipers and things like that, precision abilities. But other than that, unless the unit gets wiped, which is it's not going to happen. I've had, how many games have I had? I've had plenty of games now, and I don't think my characters have died unless it's from an epic challenge. And finally, Resurrection Orb, very similar to the Lord. In your opponent's command phase, you can pop the orb, bang, and bring some warriors back. Nice. I am going to select another Cryptek model, and it's going to yet again be a Plasmancer. I think that is my go-to Cryptek this edition. I love the Plasmancer. The 5+ critical hits, I just think is very strong. It's very aggressive, And because of the resiliency of the Necron Warriors this edition, it means I can go more aggressive rather than being so defensive. In my first game of 10th edition, I was so defensive, I just didn't know what to expect or how resilient they were. And by game 2, it was like, no, we're going all out. We don't need to be defensive anymore. Plasmancer, Plasmancer, Plasmancer. That's the way I've been playing, and it's been very successful. So yeah, that unit is 380 points. And so yeah, in fact, let's add these battle line units up together just so we know roughly where we stand. Unit 1 was 300, Unit 2 was 360, Unit 3 was 380. That's coming up to 1,040 points, I believe, if I've done my maths correct. So let's get on with the rest of the army list, the other data sheets, I suppose. Next, we're going with 2 Hexmark Destroyers. Of course, they're 70 points a pop, and they are characters. Now, there's a few reasons to bring Hexmark Destroyers. First of all, they've got good abilities, I suppose. That's the main reason. Let's go through them to begin, in fact. So the abilities, well, they've got Deep Strike if you wanted to Deep Strike them. I'm not going to be. We'll talk about that later in the video. I'm not going to be Deep Striking them. They've got the Lone Operative ability, so they can't be fired at unless the opposing unit's within 12 inches. And you could potentially pull them back behind warriors and stuff like that if you wanted to. You probably don't want to, but you've got the option. Now, unique abilities is Inescapable Death. So once per turn, one unit from your army of this ability can be the target of the fire Overwatch stratagem for 0 command points. Very similar to the Necron Overlord, in fact, even if you've already used that stratagem on a different unit this phase. In addition, you're going to be firing your Overwatch on hit rolls of a 2+, not a 6+. So the Hexmark Destroyer can basically do Overwatch with his Epic, what they call him. I always get that word wrong. Emetic Disintegrator Pistols. We got it in the end. So it's got 6 shots with the Precision ability if you wanted to use that. 18-inch range. Ballistic skill 2+, strength 6, minus 2 AP, 1 damage. Now the damage is a little bit lackluster, but you're getting to fire it for free and with a ballistic skill of a 2+ in Overwatch. Now it gets better than that with the second ability, which is Multi-Threat Eliminator. So each time an enemy unit targets a friendly Necrons unit within 3 inches, so that could be the Warriors, it could be the Immortals, and it could be anything else that you've got within 3. This Hexmark Destroyer can literally shoot as if it was its shooting phase, and it doesn't even need to target the enemy model that was firing at your Warriors. It could be any unit, it could be a character close by. You can just literally shoot as if it was your shooting phase. Pretty cool, especially when you've got precision. So characters are not going to want to go too near Hexmarks. Now the main reason for taking these guys is for actions. Well, they're not called actions in 10th edition, they've just removed actions, but you don't shoot that phase or that turn, and you don't get to charge that turn, and instead you get to do like the teleport homers or something like that, and you get to score secondary victory points. So I've got a couple of these just to be able to score me some stuff. They're still going to make use of their abilities, so they're kind of there just to score secondaries, I suppose. Another character within this list, and this one is probably the wild card. This one is the beast. Transcendent Ctan. And you've got to take the enhancement on him, which is the Semternal Weave, for 10 points. You must take that. If you don't, then don't take it at all. Where do I start with this? So let's go through his abilities and I'll explain my experience with this so far. So the Transdimensional Displacement. Each time you select this model to advance, you can remove from the battlefield and set it up again anywhere on the battlefield that is 9 inches away horizontally from enemy models. So you can effectively ping from one end of the battlefield to the other in the same turn, as long as you're 9 inches away from enemy models. That's going to be good for a number of reasons. First of all, it's going to be a distraction. It's going to pull units away because they've got to now deal with it. It's going to be an absolute scare. In fact, if it's 9 inches away from a gun line, they're not going to like that. It's also going to be getting involved with your secondary objectives. Maybe it's behind enemy lines, maybe it's an engagement or front, maybe there's just the primary objective that's in your opponent's deployment zone that's been left unguarded, and you've just got in there, and that could be one of your secondary objectives, whether it's fixed or tactical. So there's lots of ways that you can use this thing in terms of points, and also in terms of just scaring your opponent and getting them to do things they don't want to do. His second ability, which I'm going to kind of talk about in a bit more detail now anyway, which is the Necrodermis. So you're effectively halving damage. That's what it is. So in fact, let me get into the enhancement, then I'll come back to that. So the Semternal Weave is effectively a 4+ through no paint save. Right, so what you need to remember is this thing has a 4+ invulnerable save. It then has a half the damage roll. It then has half the feel no pain. Well, sorry, it has a feel no pain save of a 4+. So in fact, let's do an example for you. Let's do an example. Let's say your opponent's got a damage 6 weapon, right? They've got 4 wounds on the Transcendent Ctan. They've got 4 in. So you take those 4 dice because you've got to do inman saves. And on average, you're going to save 2 of them on a 4+. So already, you've halved the amount that's coming through instantly. You've then got the half the damage roll. So each one of those is a 6, which would be 6 and 6, becomes a 3 and 3. So you've then halved it again. It's now gone to just a 6 damage rather than a 12 damage. You then get to the stage where you've got a 4+ feel no pain save. So you're now rolling 6 dice, and guess what? You're halving it again. You've now only taken 3 damage. Out of all of that damage, you've only taken 3. It's very effective, basically. You're just halving and halving and halving. Even when it was 24 damage to begin with, before you've made any saves, you halved it to 12, you then halved it to 6, and then you've halved it again to 3, just by having these 3 abilities. This thing is an absolute nightmare, and it is, yeah, I would take it every single list, but you must have the enhancement, which you can only have 1 of those enhancements, so you can't have 3 of them with 3 enhancements. Just take 1, and believe me guys, beast, absolute beast. The last time I took this thing, I was playing against Chaos Demons, and I don't know if I've already told you the story, but Be'lakor made the charge move against my Transcendent Ctan shard, and the Transcendent Ctan shard battered it, absolutely killed it, and I barely lost any wounds. In fact, before it even died, there was another monster. I think it was, what's the other one, the Slanesh one? I can't remember what it is now. The Keeper of Secrets, is that it? I might be getting that mixed up. But there was effectively 2 greater demons, one of them being Be'lakor. This thing won. The Transcendent Ctan won the fight, and it wasn't even near dead. It was just absolutely immortal. So I highly recommend you taking that. So let's move on to the next unit anyway. So I've got 2 units of 3 Canoptek Scarabs, 40 points each, so that's 80 points. Now you might be thinking, why are you taking Canoptek Scarabs? They're not what they used to be in 9th edition. They don't have the obsec, and they're not stealing points and being hard to kill and all that anymore. They're still going to be very useful. There's a lot of reasons for it. First of all, -1 to the objective control for enemy units, to a minimum of 1 of course. Second of all, the self-destruction ability, and you're going to be throwing out mortal wounds, bearing in mind that reanimation protocols is going to kick in. I mean, of course, that'll be in your command phase, but once it does, you're likely going to be getting it back. So yeah, throwing mortal wounds and then getting it back. And also, yeah, the swarm ability we just mentioned, it's a -1 to objective control. But I'm mainly going to be using these for a mini anti-deep strike. They're going to be, in fact, I'll show you at the end of the video. I'm going to be putting a deployment map on the screen. I'm going to show you exactly where these things are going to go in theory, and then you'll understand by then. So what else do we have in this list? We've got 2 Canoptek Reanimators, 95 points each, so that's 190 points. They've got the 4+ feel no pain save, which is nice, but most importantly, the Nano Scarab Reanimation Beam Aura. Everything within 12 inches, apart from the Transcendent Ctan, because it's still not got reanimation protocols, but everything else gets to reanimate an extra D3 wounds in your reanimation protocols. And that could be triggered in your opponent's command phase with the Resurrection Orb. It could be triggered with the Undying Legion's protocol stratagem. It could be triggered in your command phase. There's lots of ways to trigger it. Ghost Arks is another one. Yeah, definitely take these. These are an absolute auto-include. Now, if my maths is correct, I believe I've got up to 1,490 points, so I've got 260 points left to spend. And I'm going to be spending these on something a little bit... I wasn't sure about how I felt about this, so you're going to have to hear me out, right? In 9th edition, I used to love these. You probably already know that. But I've gone with 2 Ghost Arks. I've gone with 2 Ghost Arks. They're 125 points each, 250 points for the pair. Now, I need to put things inside the Ghost Arks, which was why I was umming and ahhing about bringing them, because the rules weren't super clear. It says that you need to have 10 Necron warriors and a character. But then I sort of come to the conclusion after a lot of comments and a lot of forums that that is just a capacity. You don't have to fill the capacity, but it is a maximum. It is a maximum in terms of capacity. So you could stick, in theory, 1 Hexmark Destroyer, and that's enough. So I'm going with that for now. So the Hexmark Destroyers, they're going to be starting inside the Ghost Arks, so that's why they're not deep striking, so I need to put something in, otherwise they get destroyed as soon as you enter the battlefield. Now these things are actually pretty resilient. Toughness 9, 14 wounds, 3+ armor save, the 4+ invulnerable save, which is better than it was in Night because it used to have a 5+ invulnerable save, although it has lost the quantum shielding ability. Now what I like about this unit is the repair barge ability. So once per phase, Just after an enemy unit makes its attacks, if one or more friendly Necron warriors within 3 inches lost 1 or more wounds as a result of those attacks, then they can effectively use and trigger reanimation protocols. And you can't be using the same Necron unit for multiple times. I've got 2 Ghost Arks, but I've also got 2 Necron units, so Necron warrior units, so they're going to be separated anyway. So what that means is I've got countless ways of triggering reanimation protocols. Again, whether it's the Ghost Arks, it could be the stratagem. You then got my command phase, your opponent's command phase with the resurrection orbs. And of course, warriors have their own ability where it's D3+3 on an objective, or just D6 if they're not. And the stratagem, in fact, also is D3+1 if you've got a character in the unit, which I do as well. So there's loads of different things. The reanimator's an extra D3 on top of that. There's loads of things that are going to make my army pretty hard to shift. So in fact, let's get into a bit of a deployment map to show you roughly what I would want to do in theory. And of course, this is just the basic map. This is just the open, is it an open war map? Whatever this map is called, I don't know what you call it. It's in the core rules. Of course, some maps are completely different, but I'm just going to use this as an example. So just have to bear with me on that. So the first unit of Necron warriors will be, which was with the Overlord in fact, will be on one flank. And the other warrior unit with the Necron Lord will be on the other flank. They don't need to be that wide, but I'm just going to put them there for space purposes. You have them as wide as you want. Now the idea for these is they're going to be going forward, but they don't need to be going much further than halfway into the no man's land at best. That's probably where they need to stay. They don't need to go further than that. As long as we have our half of the table, we should be fine. So that's the theory on those 2 units. The third unit, which has the Immortals in it with the Imitator Stormlord, has the Plasmancer as well, that's going to be in the centre. Now, I've got the option here. I can either push forward because of that assault keyword with the Immortals, or I could just hold back a bit depending on what my opponent brings, because I don't want Imitator Stormlord getting too involved. And in fact, looking at my opponent's list during the deployment steps, I could swap out the Overlord and Imitator Stormlord and have them leading different units, because that's the part where you actually select what units are going where with the leaders. So I could rearrange that if I wanted to keep my tech back. In fact, I probably would do that, I probably should just reconsider that. But yeah, the Overlord is most likely going to be the most forward-thinking unit, because he's going to want to use all the stratagems. We've then got the Transcendent Ctan Shard. I'm just going to deploy him at the back. Could go into Deep Strike. Maybe you want to put him into Deep Strike, it doesn't really matter. But he will basically be doing his advanced move as soon as he can. He's going to be an absolute huge distraction, halving damage and all that stuff. You don't need to necessarily throw him away turn 1 with this ability, but as soon as you see a gap opening, go for it, and then start stirring up trouble. That's what I would do with him. The Necron Ghost Arks with the Hexmark Destroyers inside embarked, they are going to be actually sitting in front of the Necron Warriors. They're going to almost act like a screen to try and prevent enemy units from charging the Warriors. Now, of course, they'll still be able to get round it, but I'm just making it a little bit more difficult because they've got to stay 1 inch away from enemy models. And if they want to charge the Ghost Ark, well, they're going to be there for quite a while, so that's up to them. But as long as the Ghost Ark is within close proximity of the Warriors, we're going to be using the Repair Barge ability, and it's screening off, which is nice. The Canoptek Reanimators are both going to be sitting sort of just as you can see there, in fact, just so they've got a nice 12-inch aura across the entire quarter. We want every single model to be within 12 inches, unless that Transcendent Ctan goes off somewhere else, but he doesn't have reanimation protocol, so it doesn't matter where he goes, he doesn't need to be within that aura. And then finally, we've got those 2 Canoptek Scarab swarms. They're going to be sitting in the corners. Again, this is all army dependent on your opponent's army, because some factions such as Chaos Demons, they can actually deep strike in less than 6 inches, or less than 9 inches rather. They can get in 6 inches. I think it's even 3 inches if they've got the shadow thing going off in our deployment zone. Not always the case, it's not going to happen that often. But they do also have a stratagem, I believe, where they can just pop in as well. So you've got to watch out for that. So it all depends on who you're going up against, but pretty much all the other armies have got that 9-inch radius. So as long as you've got a 9-inch bubble just to surround, or just to cover the corner, so you're effectively blocking deep strike from the corner of both sides. Then what I'd be looking to do is push forward. I want to own my half of the table. And the Canoptek Reanimators need to stay slightly back just so that they're blocking the central area of my backline. We don't want any enemy deep strikers coming in from the centre side, or from the centre of my deployment zone at the rear. And if we're not able to find that gap, again, it depends on the map size and all that stuff, but if we're not able to find that gap, we could always pull one of our units back, whether it's the Immortals, or even the Transcendent Ctan could stay back a little bit as well. But yeah, the Ghost Arks, as you can see, they're going to be screening off, and we're going to be owning our half of the table. Anything that is in no man's land will hopefully be ours. That's in our half, and of course anything that's in our own deployment zone will also be ours. And then it really just kind of comes down to objectives, doesn't it? It comes down to secondary objectives in particular. Now I've been through all the secondary objectives now, and I've noticed that with the fixed secondary objectives, there are some good ones in there, but there's a much better options in the non-fixed options, which of course we can't select. We have to choose the tactical randomness if we're going that direction. Now, in terms of the fixed stuff, engage on all fronts is a possibility for this list. Ghost Arks could do it, the Transcendent Ctan could do it. Of course, we're going to be having our own quarters anyway. I think that's 2 victory points if you've got 3, and 4 victory points if you've got all 4 table quarters. That's doable if you wanted to go in that route. You've also got the cleanse. You've also got cleanse, which is if you take over one objective that your opponent has. I believe it's in the no man's land. I've not got it to hand now. Then you get a victory point, or no, you get 2 victory points, and if you get 2 or more, you get 4 victory points. So I think we could quite easily do that. You've also got another option of deploy teleport Homer, and you don't have to do it in your opponent's backline. You can do it in the centre of the battlefield, within 6 inches, I think it is. So you could do that for 2 victory points. We could quite easily shield the centre of the battlefield, and then get a Hexmark Destroyer perhaps to do the teleport Homer. Now, in terms of the tactical options, the random options, there's loads that we could be pulling and scoring quite easily. Extend battle lines perhaps, where we just get into the no man's land. We've got defend stronghold. Yep, we've pretty much got that nailed. That's going to be very easy. Overwhelming force to push opponents off of objectives in the no man's land. Yep, I think we could do that. How often will we be doing that in a game? I don't know, but it doesn't really matter because it's random cards, it's tactical cards. We just need to do it the once and then move on. Secure no man's land, again, it's the same sort of situation there. And area denial, again, they're all very similar in terms of the just gaining either our area or the no man's land. They're all very similar, and that kind of benefits us as Necron players. But those cards are random. It's only the fixed ones that are a little bit more difficult when you've got things such as assassination, bring it down, all that kind of stuff is from the fixed ones. And I don't think you can, unless you see your opponent's list and go, you know what, I can definitely score assassination, then you go for it. Maybe if in fact if it's a mirror match going up against other Necrons, yeah, they're going to have loads of characters just like we are. So yeah guys, that is my 2,000 point list. I've used it a few times, it's been successful in a few times, but you'll have to let me know your comments and what would you change in fact? Would you edit this list? Now I know there are some weaknesses to this list. For example, it hasn't got much anti-tank. Now I'm fully aware it hasn't got much anti-tank, but I'm kind of relying on the lethal hits ability in numbers. With the Ghost Warrior, with the Necron Warriors, with the Ghost Weapons, the Flayers, if you're hitting on a 5+, you're going straight through the toughness. Yes, it is only 1 damage, yes it's only -1 AP, but we've got the numbers, so I'm kind of hoping that would work. And of course the Transcendent Ctan shard can hit quite nasty as well, just ask Bellicor in the last game I had. But yeah guys, that is it from me today. You'd have to let me know what you think of the list. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in the next one.